Hello and welcome back to the County Chat channel. We are continuing on with our County Championship season previews, going through from the sort of last place finishers in Division 2 from 2025 all the way through to the winners of Division 1 in 2025. We're up to Yorkshire. We're up to sort of the teams, Yorkshire, who just survived relegation in 2025. And yeah, going to be going on to sort of talk about their 2026, who were their best players from last year, as in who was the standout player from 2025 and who is the potential star performer from 2026. The two kind of segments I've been doing for each county as we've been going through. We'll also be talking about the leadership group, their overseas, any ins and outs that happen throughout the season. We'll be having a little look at the sort of statistics from 2025 and then having a kind of look at like a kind of potential opening day lineup and then a predicted finish for the 2026 season. So without further ado, we're kind of getting straight into the Yorkshire preview. The White Rose County home at Headingley. And so yeah, the leadership group is about sort of Yorkshire core as you can get. You've got Anthony McGrath as head coach, who signed sort of 5-year contract, I think maybe 2 years ago, maybe even just a year ago. Anyway, head coach for a while, Anthony McGrath, the sort of legend of Yorkshire in a way in and around the club for a while. And then, speaking of Yorkshire legends, Jonathan Bairstow, or Johnny Bairstow, as he's affectionately known. He's sort of dropped into county cricket, and it makes me very, very happy that he sort of took on the Yorkshire captaincy, as well as he's kind of really committed a lot of time to it. And I think that's just sort of, it shows the kind of love he has for the club. Obviously, the kind of connection with his dad and all of the things that makes county cricket so special. And Johnny Bairstow being the club captain of Yorkshire is kind of exactly that to me. So we're kind of a very settled leadership group, I think it would be safe to say, here at Yorkshire. And long may that continue for their sake. Anyway, onto the overseas for Yorkshire in 2026. They've got Logan Van Beek for the first 8 county championship matches. He'll also be playing in the Vitality Blast for Yorkshire. And then they've got Jai Richardson for the first sort of block of county championship matches. So I don't actually know when they mean that is until. But anyway, without the first block, Jai Richardson will be playing. Will Sutherland as well. He'll be playing 2 county champ matches in June, as well as playing in the Vitality Blast. So a couple of Aussies, a Dutchman, and sort of a good overseas outlook just in general. And then we'll get onto the ins and outs for 2026. An in is another UK passport. So I just did the Hampshire record. Jake Lehman, son of Darren Lehman, just gone and got his UK passport and gone and playing for Hampshire as a local player. Sam Whiteman has just done the exact same thing. Now, if you were to ask me out of the two teams who got the better player, I would have to lean towards Sam Whiteman, if you were to be honest. Sam Whiteman has played for WA. He's been the captain of WA. WA is Western Australia, if that wasn't obvious. And Sam Whiteman has just been a consistent run getter in the top 3, and have been a kind of leadership figure for the team. Sam Whiteman was actually born in Yorkshire as well, so it just kind of all makes a lot of sense. And he moves to sort of Western Australia as a very, very young kid. So again, he's making use of his UK passport, which means he's a local player. So despite in interviews, I'm sure he'll sound pretty Australian. He is a local English player for the sake of him using his UK passport, basically to forego any Australian commitments from this point. So he can't play any more state cricket, and he will also never be able to be picked for Australia at this point. Again, the reason it's the kind of age range that these cricketers are, it's usually cricketers who haven't been around in Australian squads anyway, but are very good domestic cricketers and realise they can get paid a little bit more out here in the UK. So anyway, Sam Whiteman is the only in for Yorkshire. They have a few more outs though. Dawid Malan is off to Gloucestershire, but that's just on a white ball contract. Johnny Tattersall is gone to Leicestershire after having sort of a loan move there. He's left permanently. As I mentioned in the Leicestershire preview, it kind of felt like a mutually beneficial one because Johnny Tattersall, if you're unaware, is a wicketkeeper batter. So him batting, being a wicketkeeper batter, sort of underneath Johnny Bairstow at the stage of the career he was at, it just didn't really make much sense, to be honest. So kind of a good move for him, and then Leicestershire, a good move for them in the sense of getting a player of Johnny Tattersall's quality in. Jordan Thompson has gone to Warwickshire, another sort of local Yorkshire lad. I must admit, when I saw this announced and I saw him walking off the pitch and it was his last game at Headingley and all of these things as a home player, I was surprised. I think Yorkshire could have done and kept a player like him, but they decided to move on from him, or Warwickshire were successful in their kind of chase of him. I don't know which way around it kind of was if it was more Yorkshire were kind of gave him the chance to go, or John Thompson sort of went after that move. So who knows? And then Matt Milnes went to Kent. He'd sort of been struggling with injuries for a while, had been loaned to Kent a few times, but it's now been made a permanent move. Anyway, on to the batters list, or the sort of squad list, to begin with batters. Obviously, some of these cricketers are England cricketers. Well, the two batters you might hear me mention quite quickly. I don't know how much county cricket they'll play, so without further ado, batters, you've got Joe Root, Harry Brook, Adam Lyth, Johnny Bairstow, Sam Whiteman, Finley Bean, James Wharton, Harry Duke, Will Luxton, Will Benison, Yash Vargadia, Noah Kelly, Owen Smith. For bowlers, they have Ben Code, Jack White, Jai Richardson, Dan Moriarty, Ben Cliff, Jaffa Chohar, Alex Wade, Matthew Furbank, Jay Singh. And then for all-rounders, they have George Hill, Don Best, Will Sutherland, Logan Van Beek, Matthew Revis, Charlie H. Taylor, and Jawad Akhtar. Now, it's a big squad, simply. I mean, needless to say, you can kind of discount Joe Root and Harry Brook from that. They did both play a county championship match last year, and I'm sure they will do. I kind of, in a part of me, there's been all this news coming out about the ECB's thing. I kind of hope as a bit of a, I don't know, like just to get these players back down to earth, they kind of force all the test match cricketers to play county championship cricket, because I just think it's a really good thing for them to do, and it's good for the game in and of itself. So I kind of hope Joe Root and Harry Brook play a lot for Yorkshire. But anyway, on just a general point, Yorkshire have a very big squad. I mean, Yorkshire are a big county. A lot of depth, a lot of young players on staff. So yeah, it's interesting kind of how they'll go about playing them. I guess their One Day Cup squad will be pretty quite strong, and a lot of sort of players who'll be wanting to sort of jump into the team, and will be struggling to get into it, which is always a good place to be as a county. Anyway, sort of onto the team review for 2026 and for 2025, and then I look forward to sort of 2026 with exactly that in mind. So the team review, Yorkshire survived a close-fought relegation battle in 2025. I mean, in their first year back in Division 1, it kind of never was that comfortable. Like, they had some really great performances. I mean, for example, they very much like dominated Sussex in a fixture, and they looked all the part of a Division 1 side at points, but then they also had some really tough losses, effectively, and obviously any team that ends up very close to relegation, that is the case. They survived sort of after a heroic win on the last day at Headingley. They beat Durham, and I spoke about it in the Durham preview, but kind of didn't know and remember exactly what happened. So Durham had batted first, scored a decent amount. Yorkshire then scored like 100 more than they did. Mayank Agarwal came over and scored like a 180, and it was a big score. And then basically, Durham kind of just had to bat out day 4, and just kind of get past and make Yorkshire bat again. What ended up happening was Yorkshire bowled them out for 85, meant that Yorkshire stayed clear by beating Durham, and it sent Durham down, and also saved Hampshire, the team I've just begun to record for. So it was an interesting sort of end of the really interesting end of the season, and I remember watching it on my phone and just sort of kept on. I was watching the Sussex game at the same time, and then I kept on seeing the scorecard, and Yorkshire just kept taking wickets, and went on to stay up. So despite that kind of dramatic victory, Yorkshire had some players who stood up and were some of the best players in County Championship Division 1, just full stop. So Adam Lyth, George Hill, and Craig White very much did this. They stood up against the Division 1 competition and really made themselves, excellent seasons. Adam Lyth, nearly 1,200 runs. George Hill, 50-odd wickets, 500 runs, roughly. Craig White, 40-odd wickets, average around 21, 22 as your opening bowler. So those three really, again, sort of stood up to the test. Whereas I'd say, and it may be harsh to someone like Johnny Bairstow and a few other players to not include them in that, but I'd say basically the majority of the rest of the team, I would say, didn't quite excel in the same way, effectively. A lot of their side. So again, I'm kind of Johnny Bairstow, I'd say, kind of performed to how you'd expect, and beyond that, I'm going to say everyone else kind of was a bit below what they could do. I'm actually just realising Matthew Revis averaged 56 throughout the season. So anyway, my point is kind of that Yorkshire had a few players to do quite well, but there was a lot of players who I would say underperformed for their first years in Division 1 as young cricketers. So, they basically, I'm trying to make the point that Yorkshire have a young side, in essence. They have a lot of young cricketers in their sort of early to mid-20s, and a lot of the cricketers who might, sneak into the team, are exactly that kind of age. So there's a lot of maturing that needs to be done, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, players like Finley Bean, James Wharton, Will Luxton, Will Benison, a lot of these kind of cricketers, young cricketers, when they come into the team, need to make sure that they're standing up to the level and make sure that if they kind of are basically showing they can be excellent at the Division 1 level, because it is a bit of a step up from Division 2. So basically, my point is, and I've not explained it well, but some of their players really stood up to the test, and I think some of them faltered a little bit. And I'm basically saying, if it kind of remains like that, Yorkshire will really, really stay around the relegation zone. Though all of a sudden, if some of those players who have the talent levels that some player like Finley Bean does or James Wharton does, and they start scoring runs consistently, and someone like Ben Code starts taking wickets to the extent that we know he can do, Yorkshire all of a sudden are a really, really excellent side in Division 1, and I wouldn't say would be looking, they wouldn't be looking backwards towards getting relegated, but they're looking upwards towards the title picture. I think the reality is they'll probably fall in somewhere in between, or if they kind of all fall apart. Say George Hill had one amazing year at Division 1, but it doesn't mean it's like a guarantee every year he's going to do that again and again and again. And same with someone like Matthew Revis. So these kind of young, early 20s, mid-20s Yorkshire cricketers really need to just prove themselves to be the level that I think a lot of them people think they are. Like someone like Finley Bean especially, I think is a really obvious one. So I think if they're going to start pushing up the table, these young cricketers who Yorkshire put a lot of stock into, a lot of time into, we're going to have to step up and realise that potential, and make good on the sort of faith that has been shown to them, in essence. Anyway, that is kind of all for the sort of the team review and looking back on the 2025 season. In essence, I think Yorkshire have got a very talented squad. They're well supplemented with overseas cricketers. I think it's basically, as I mentioned, a few of these young talented cricketers start pulling their weight even more, all of a sudden you're looking at Yorkshire as a bit of a powerhouse. And especially when you've got players like Joe Root and Harry Brook who can come back into that team. Obviously, they won't do all that often, but again, it can be a lot better of a team than it has been basically over the last few years. Anyway, now on to the sort of standout player for 2025 and a potential star performer from 2026, or for 2026, I should say. So the standout player for 2025, it was actually, I went into it thinking it was like dead on, dead set, no-brainer. It's going to be George Hill. It is still going to be George Hill, but I just kind of had forgotten just the level of season that Adam Lyth had, and it would be disingenuous to put him as a potential star performer because, quite frankly, he's beyond that. He's been a cricketer who's produced this for a long time. But 14 matches, 24 innings, 1,173 runs, an average of 51 for Adam Lyth. It's just sort of almost in a way just proving he still had it, proving he still was one of the best openers in England. And it just makes any county cricket fan smile in a way. He's just passed 250 first-class matches, a man who's got 15,000 first-class runs, and, most of them are for Yorkshire. Obviously, he played 7 matches for England, but, he'll have passed 15,000 runs for Yorkshire already. And he's just a legend, simply put. And he had a legendary year, and it was really cool to see. So, for his sake, long may that continue, but he didn't quite get to standout player for me. I did go for George Hill. And George Hill, I think it was, as much as anything, I'd always been a big fan of George Hill's. But the level of bowling that he kind of showed in 2025, I don't think I realised he quite had. So he didn't play in every single match. He played an England Lions match throughout the summer, I think, which meant he missed one. But he took 51 wickets at an average of 16.72. I mean, that is a ridiculously low average to take 51 wickets at. An economy of 2.5, strike rate of 40, bowled lots of overs. 341 overs and bowled 100 maidens. I mean, that's a pretty decent effort, isn't it? Anyway, just an incredibly low economy, incredibly low average, 51 wickets. All that would be probably enough to make you a stand-up performer. And he didn't have his best year with the bat, but at the end of the day, he's still a kind of bowling all-rounder. 420 runs at an average of 22. He could easily push that average towards 30, and all of a sudden you're talking about one of the best players in Division 1, just full stop. So that is my standout player from 2025, is George Hill. I think his batting will take another step up. I mean, his best innings of the year came in the last game of the season. So, I mean, that would suggest it in a kind of basic sense. But his bowling is such a level that his batting doesn't need to be brilliant. It just needs to be for him to be a bowling all-rounder. If he just can average 25 to 30, his value as a cricketer is through the roof, quite frankly. So yeah, I'm a big fan of George Hill's. I think his Instagram bio is professional net bowler, which is just an excellent bio, if you ask me. So anyway, George Hill, standout player for 2025. Congratulations. Not that you will ever see that, I'm sure. Anyway, potential star performer. I couldn't choose between two, and I kept saying I'm not going to do this, but I am going to continue to do this. So apologies for real County Chat fans. Potential star performer, I've gone for Finley Bean, but I've also gone for James Wharton. Now, I think if you're going to push me for an answer, I'm going to say Finley Bean. And it's because, quite frankly, he had quite a poor 2025. He's kind of the main player I'm talking about when I'm talking about a player who had all the talent but didn't really produce. So in a 13-match season, he missed one match, 13 matches, 555 runs, an average of 26. That in and of itself isn't great. And obviously you can't discount someone's whole season, but just to prove maybe how much, if you were checking scorecards throughout the season, how poor his season kind of looked, is because he did have one massive score. He scored 224 in one innings. So if again, and this is not how cricket works, just to be clear, but if you took the 224 from the 555 and reduced the innings by one, you'd suddenly be looking at like one of the worst opening seasons you can kind of have as a county cricketer. He did score 224, so that is a total irrelevance. But you see, my point is that he did have a lot of games where he failed effectively as an opening batter. His talent is so high. I mean, him in Division 2, he looked absolutely brilliant. I think at points the kind of suffocating opening bowling was a little bit too much for him. Like him and Adam Lyth would be opening the batting. They'd both be struggling to get these really excellent opening bowlers away. And then Finley Bean would play a false stroke and get out, whereas Adam Lyth would stay in and then score. And you'd kind of be looking at that and like that shows that experience. There's sort of extra 10 years of playing. So again, another year of those two opening the batting and sort of Adam Lyth mentoring Finley Bean. I just see Finley Bean becoming successful. I'm a big fan of his talent. I think he's a really, really excellent cricketer and an excellent batter. And like in a way, I think maybe James Wharton's a bit more of a tip of the cap to like someone who did have a really good 2025, but I think will have a better 2026, which I think is true. Like I think he scored like 700 runs at an average of about 33, James Wharton, batting from 3 the whole season. And that is a bit more like evidence to suggest he might have another good year. But to me, Finley Bean had such a poor year that he just, to me, his talent level is so much higher than that there is going to be somewhere in between that is found. And again, just another year older, another year wiser, and another year of, technique throughout the winter, whatever, all of this sort of stuff. And, another year of just being older and mature and better at batting. I think there's something in that, being a bit older and batting better in long form cricket. And I think Finley Bean will kind of, really benefit from that in essence. And I think it's going to be a really, really good thing for his career. And that's just why I see Finley Bean having a good year in 2026. So potential star performer, I'm going for Finley Bean officially. But yeah, James Wharton, I'm also giving a bit of a tip of the cap to, because I think I could have easily gone for him. And I think Yorkshire really like him as a cricketer. I really like him as a cricketer, and I really see him having an excellent year. Anyway, time to sort of go a bit screen sharing, look at the statistics for 2026. And we'll get sharing this screen as well. So anyway, onto the batting and as also the statistics, just in a general sense. Matthew Revis there at the top, 766 runs at an average of 63.83. Again, if it wasn't Adam Lyth and it wasn't George Hill, it'd probably be Matthew Revis that I'd be name dropping. He was just kind of done by the fact that he didn't play the full season. I think at the start of the year, he just wasn't getting picked. I don't think it was an injury or anything. And then he just started batting and kind of didn't really get out. It felt like he just kind of kept scoring runs, kept making big scores. I think he scored that 152 not out that you can see that against Sussex. So maybe that's why it's sort of implanted in my mind. As I mentioned, Adam Lyth, just a class operator, 1,173 runs, average of 51. I mean, it's just exactly the kind of season you want as an opening batter, simply put. Mayank Agarwal, as I mentioned, he came for a 3-match stint at the end of the season, kind of a bit of a last prayer hope, and he scored 175 in their biggest game and saved them and won them the game. So kind of was money well spent by the Yorkshire Cricket Board there, getting him in for the end of the season. Milan played more red ball cricket than I kind of remember. 5 matches, 9 innings, 392, an average of 49. I think he signed a white ball only contract, so it could be that's the last red ball cricket we ever see Darren Milan play. Anyway, Johnny Bairstow, 12 matches, didn't score 100, funny enough, but 735 runs, an average of 45.93. So, I mean, again, if you took all the kind of context of it being Johnny Bairstow away, as a wicketkeeper batter, you'd be over the moon with that being your wicketkeeper batter. And of course, being Johnny Bairstow, his strike rate is well into the 60s. So, again, as a wicketkeeper batter, it's just a very good player to have, quite frankly. Joe Root there, he had a bit of one of those proper aura moments. He played one match, got one in the first innings. Loads of people left when he got out in the first innings. Then in the second innings, I believe he got 90. And again, the stadium started filling as he got through his innings, and then he got out for 90, and it was the most full it had been at the time he got out for 90. And then again, by the time the next batter had literally arrived at the crease, he had gone. The fans had gone, and it was one of those moments where just people in Leeds who could get to Headingley was oh, Joe Root's doing well. I'll go watch Joe Root for an afternoon. And then they were there. As soon as Joe Root got out, they were yeah, I've had a good time. I'm off now. Which just was again, just Joe Root having that aura of Yorkshire fans just made me smile. James Wharton, as I mentioned, those 700 runs at an average of 33, a pretty good effort, that memory. And yeah, he also didn't score 100. So quite a few batters who had good seasons not scoring hundreds. And then Finley Bean, who got 555 runs, scored 100. Anyway, I'm just more of an interest of statistics there, where hundreds at the end of the day are kind of an arbitrary number that we all celebrate. Anyway, James Wharton, a good year with the bat. Jordan Thompson, good year with the bat. Didn't realise that. 32 average, 323 runs for a sort of lower order player. Again, I think Yorkshire might go back and look at that, letting him go and be disappointed that they did. Finley Bean, as I mentioned, down year for him, but I think he's got the talent to go back up. Will Luxton didn't play all that much, but not brilliant. Dom Best, I think he's on the edge of being an all-rounder, but he did score 100 last year, so it kind of firmed him into the all-rounder category for me. Dom Best is an excellent cricketer. Always been a big fan. Since his debut as an England cricketer, it feels like a long time ago now. To me, he's someone who's massively overlooked by the current England regime because he's a kind of an old-fashioned spinner and he doesn't take wickets at the same rate, but his economy is always below 3. And God, how bad that would be if we had a spin bowler who knew where the ball would land. Anyway, Dom Best, good cricketer, big fan of him. George Hill, as I mentioned, not as good of a year for the bat as he could do, but again, 420 runs when you're doing less with the ball is incredibly valuable. So it's kind of one of those where it's a bit of a bonus, his batting. Aside from that, none of these guys you'd really say is noteworthy to mention. Just a lot of players who played a few games here or there. Yeah, I mean, Ben Code getting a 50. Shout out to him. I didn't realise he had some batting in his bag. Anyway, on to the bowling. George Hill, 51 wickets, average of 16. We mentioned this. I mean, just a remarkable season from him and a remarkable bowling year from someone so young. Adam Lyth, I didn't even realise he'd added three wickets at an average of 20 to his season from last year. That's just spectacular to see. Craig White, as I mentioned, feel quite vindicated with this Craig White because basically Craig White joined Yorkshire and they let go of Matthew Fisher. Matthew Fisher ended up getting an England Nines call-up, and that's a whole other matter and all of those sort of things. But Craig White fundamentally outperformed Matthew Fisher, and his 42 wickets at an average of 23, an economy of 2.65. And basically I was like, Craig White will do better than Matthew Fisher ever would have done, and I think Craig White proved me right. So thank you, Craig White, for proving me right on that one. Matt Milnes off to Kent, actually had a good few games for Yorkshire last year. Ben Code, again, I mentioned him having needing to sort of step back up to the standard he's at. He kind of struggled with injuries last year, as you see. And again, you might think 21 wickets, average of 32, an economy of 2.66. That is really, really good. Ben Code, and I won't screen share this thing, but I'm just going to open up his profile. He's kind of one of those players who no one really realises, but his economy and he's got over the course of his career, he's got 323 wickets at an average of 20.3, an economy of 2.68. So those kind of stats that we've just seen there are actually quite a big drop down for him, and that just shows the level of skill that he is at. And again, he will kind of return to that form, especially if he stays fit. Jordan Thompson not getting off to Warwickshire. Darren Moriarty, left arm spinner and all rounder. He's a good option to have. At the end of the day, they have Dom Best, so he doesn't get all that as much cricket as he might do, other than when it's basically turning a lot, which is kind of midsummer. But Dom Best, 26 wickets and average of 40. That economy under 3, as I mentioned. Again, he's kind of, I mean, in a way similar to Liam Dawson. He's got that real control element to his game and kind of really can come alive in a fixture when the ball starts turning. But maybe compared to someone like Shoaib Bashir, maybe can't get that wicket just sort of out of nowhere. Matthew Revis over here, and Will Sutherland, by the way, because he's coming back for a stint, didn't have a great go of it last year, but it'll be interesting to see how he goes. The Chief can bowl pretty quick and is a good batter as well. But anyway, Matthew Revis, he's like an all-rounder and he's still claimed as an all-rounder. And when I kind of was like growing up and he was getting into the Yorkshire team, he very much was like an all-rounder full stop. I don't know if this season of bowling will kind of be enough to make him just a batter, to be quite harsh in a way. 117 overs, 5 wickets at an average of 96.2. Whether or not he was just getting the ball when it was just flat and there wasn't much going on, I'm not too sure. But again, having had a season so good with the bat, averaging 63, if you have a season averaging 96 bowling in the same year, is it the starts to be the coaches and analysts are like, do we just focus on you being a batter? I don't know. Maybe that's just a too simplistic way of looking at it. And I can't pretend I watched much of Matthew Revis bowling last year. I hope he stays a bowler. I've always seen, and he always seemed impressive to me, but those stats don't do him many favours. Anyway, time to kind of screen share one more time and do the predicted lineup and predicted finish for the 2026 season for Yorkshire. So anyway, the first day, a potential opening day lineup for Yorkshire. So I've got the old player that they had last year opening the batting. I've got Adam Lyth and Finlay Bean. Now, that might seem like a pretty obvious no-brainer. Of course, Adam Lyth and Finlay Bean being the kind of young up-and-comer. But it's Sam Whiteman has opened the batting in his career and has come over. And of course, James Morton had a whole sort of year batting at 3. So again, I'm basically making the point that Finlay Bean, if he had a really, really, really terrible start to the season, Sam Whiteman going into an opener, James Morton going at 3, and then one of the other young batters getting a go. So maybe Matthew Revis moves up to 4 and you get someone in at 6 or whatever it might be. Finlay Bean, despite being my pick for the potential star performer, there's a bit more jeopardy around his kind of pick than there would have been in previous years, because it's fundamentally last year, no matter how bad it got, he wasn't really going to get dropped because there just wasn't really a viable alternative. Where Sam Whiteman is like about as viable as an alternative it can get, and has scored a lot of runs from opening the batting in a very high level red ball environment in the Sheffield Shield for Western Australia. So, hopefully it will help Finlay Bean in a way, having that extra protection from Sam Whiteman. But maybe that pressure will also be too telling. Who knows? I've just shifted James Morton just down 1. He batted 3 most of last year, had a good year. But yeah, not going to overcomplicate it in a way, just stick him in at 4. Jonathan Bairstow, or Johnny Bairstow, captain and wicketkeeper from 5. He obviously could bat higher. I just think if he's wicketkeeping and captaining, he'll probably just think 5's a good spot. I also don't think he'll want to bully ahead of someone like James Morton, especially with Sam Whiteman joining the team. Matthew Revis in at 6. Really, really good batter. Again, that all-rounder capability is kind of come into question, as in just from me. But he, I think he'll probably be thinking that as well. But again, having a batter who averages 60 from 6 is not a bad thing to have. George Hill, I've retained him at 7, though someone like Logan Van Beek is also a very good all-rounding option. So again, if he had a really bad start to the year with his bat, he could probably move down to 8 and Van Beek go up to 7. But again, the kind of options that it gives them with George Hill, meaning they have one of their frontline seam bowlers fall in behind at 7, and then therefore they can pick 4 other seamers or Dom Bess, who I haven't started in this first day opening lineup. And I think in essence, I maybe have gone sort of too heavy on it's going to be seaming and swinging to open the season, but it's just the weather we've had here, and it's kind of a little bit drier, but then today it's blowing an absolute gale outside and looking a lot more like sort of winter than it had been. So again, it'll be interesting to see how the kind of teams are picked in that first week. And Dom Bess is someone who's good enough that I don't think he would necessarily get dropped. It's just because I don't see which player he'd come in for, if that makes sense. So anyway, to carry on, Logan Van Beek at 8, the all-round option and overseas. Jai Richardson, very, very good bowler. I think he'll do really, really well with the Duke's ball in hand. And then Ben Code and then Craig White, 10 and 11. And then Dom Bess I've got at 12. So again, Dom Bess could very easily be in this team. and he'd come in for one of these 5 seam bowlers. And it feels like a lot to have 5 seam bowlers, but again, if the start of the season happens as it does, and maybe, you know, looks like how it could do, I think it would be a really, really good option for, you know, for Yorkshire to go with, and maybe drop John Best for just that first day of the season. Now, the predicted 2026 finish, that is similar to the Hampshire preview I've just done. I've actually put them in the exact same place as where they finished in last year. Now, that might seem a bit of a rogue one, and maybe, you know, harsh on Yorkshire and sort of suggesting they're not really going anywhere. I don't think that at all. I actually could see, as I kind of mentioned in their team review, I could really, really see Yorkshire going up the table. I think, you know, if players, as I mentioned, like Finley Bean, like James Wharton, like some of those other young batters who could come into the side, and say bowlers like, you know, Ben Code get back to his best, and Jai Richardson's superb for the time he's with the team, and whatever, and, you know, all the other young bowlers that they have, Yorkshire could really start pushing themselves up the table. I think the reason it's a 7th for now for me, I think the teams I have above them, I just see there's more of a clear like direction, and I think there's more quality and in-depth quality. So anyway, that's kind of why I've ended up with, you know, Yorkshire where they are. But, you know, I'm a big fan of their team. And the reality is, when you get to these point of Division 1 counties, I'm a big fan of every team. I think all of their teams are going to do well. The reality is they all can't do well. They're all playing each other, right? So it's you're kind of trying to have to work out what you value above one. And year by year, I'm kind of enjoying learning and understanding it a bit more, and maybe understanding what values higher, and with the point systems being what they are, and all of these sort of things. So anyway, without further ado, that's kind of it. That is it for the Yorkshire season preview. I hope you've really enjoyed it. If you've, you know, enjoyed watching it, make sure to drop a like, drop a comment, leave a rating if you're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I see every single one of them, and I really, really do appreciate anyone who takes the time to watch these videos. And leaving a comment is just another even better thing, and even a sweeter thing for me to read. So I do appreciate anyone who does. There should be some videos if you're watching on YouTube, sort of the playlists and the videos that you might be interested in watching. And also just a kind of general sense of just thanks for watching in general, and keep following, and keep, you know, looking out for content. I think there's going to be plenty of more of this kind of content coming, a lot more of these previews obviously coming out, and then throughout the summer we'll be kind of changing up the kind of content, different kind of stuff coming out. So again, just make sure you're subscribed, followed, wherever you might be. If you're sort of starting your day, I hope you have a great day. If you're kind of at the end of your day, I hope you've had a wonderful day. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Cheers.